Welcome to Radio Sensation. I'm your host, Dan, and today's theme is just random comics. So I have some small boxes of comics that only hold like about 40 comics, but they're not in any kind of order. There's just a random jumble of stuff that wouldn't make really sense to go through them. It would take forever to really pinpoint things and lay stuff out. So instead, I'm just going to take a couple that I want to point out to you and, show you a couple things I've got in the box. And so let's, one of the things I noticed was I had the very first issue of Judge Dredd from here in the U.S. There were a couple other random ones, very random. There's 11, a couple in a row. Now, I was buying this as soon as it started coming out. I knew of Judge Dredd. I had read a couple issues of 2000 AD. But I was very excited to see it come out this way, and I was not disappointed. The Brian Boland issues are the ones that they decided to do first, to reprint here first. That was probably a good idea because his is the most accessible, I think, to the regular U.S. comic reader, and he's just a tremendous artist. So this first issue, starts off with Judge Death. And, Judge Death is such a strong character. It's kind of like, wow, where do you go from here? It's just, it's a great comic. I'm not sure, some people are only familiar with Judge Dredd from the movies. The Stallone Judge Dredd, has comedy in it. It gets some of that over-the-top flavor. But, they take his helmet off. They do too many things that don't fit the comic that well. And the newer movie also kind of misses the mark. It gets some things done better and some things not. This is, Judge Dredd is goofy enough and the ideas are strange enough. It probably should be an animated show. They shouldn't try to do live action because they always have to leave something out. The second movie just takes itself way too seriously, and the sci-fi elements are really downplayed, I think, But these early issues with, the Judge Death is a really great image. That's fantastic. This is a great introduction to the character. And these have been reprinted now a lot. So they're pretty easy to find. But I would suggest, if you haven't read much Judge Dredd or you're only familiar with the movies, seek this stuff out. Like I said, I think the easiest way in is with the Brian Boland. But some of the other artists are just as good, and the stories are just as good, and they're all worth tracking down. So that's that one. Is this the one? This is part of the Cursed Earth, which was a long epic, and this is issue 9. So we're already past the Brian Boland art. Oh, and this creature with his big digging claws and stuff. Go. And this one is the day the law died, and this one had people, a lot of they were doing it in 6 page runs in the magazine, and so Brian Boland does do some of this, and then there's 3 other artists that work on it too, but it's great. It's a great little story. Judge Dredd is set up. But he comes back. Here's more of the. This is another chapter of the day the law died, and again, it jumps between several artists. I like the gator people. I like these monsters too. They don't look realistic, really, the way he draws them here, but they're great. I love this. This is what they needed more of in the Judge Dredd movies when they do them. They need more of the over the top craziness. Stephen Wild died part 4. I think this is getting near the end. I think this is where they wrap this one up. All right. Oh, and so here, this was in the box. This is Johnny Quest. Now, Doug Wildey, fan of Alex Toth, and Doug Wildey himself is a great artist, and he actually did storyboarding and worked on the original Johnny Quest TV show, and they hired him to do this. He illustrates this the first story in here, and it looks great. The comic reads just like an episode of the show, for better or worse. Saying, like, gorilla. I mean, that's the same kind of goofy thing they would occasionally do in Johnny Quest too. But great, that 60s adventure vibe is captured perfectly there. Really great. I love it. And then the second feature in here is illustrated by Steve Rude, who's also a big Alex Toth devotee, although he has a lot of other, they both had a lot of other influences beyond Toth. But, obviously Kirby and Ditko are big for Steve Rude too. But you can see some of that, the connection between them. And it's another one that captures that vibe really well. A lot of fun. I don't know if this stuff's been reprinted. It used to be really easy to find in the dollar bins. I don't know if it is anymore or not, but definitely worth checking out. And while we're on the subject of Steve Rude, here's his loving homage to Kirby. It's the special Mr. Miracle issue, and it's there's a couple panels. See, that looks Mark Evner. Mike Royer. Some of these things look a little off for Rude, but the vast majority of it looks like his usual stuff, and it's great. The cartoonist kayfabe guys point out the funky Flash Man and what a rip it is on Kirby, but you don't need to know the whole thing between Stan and Kirby to enjoy this, or to get what you need to out of that character. And that flashback to him growing up on Apocalypse. So, good stuff. Very good. If you're a Rude fan, you got to have that one. This is Vortex. I bought this because of Jaime Hernandez, who, of course, I was high off Love and Rockets at the time. So I picked this up. It's a sci-fi anthology comic, or at least this issue is sci-fi. I don't know if it always was. But his is like a homage to Astro Boy. So instead of the little boy, there's a young girl, but she's robot who's been created by a father figure. And, you know, it's a real quick, not much to it, but it's fun. I like the artwork. Like I said, at the time, you know, I would get anything those guys were doing. There's a couple other things in here. Don't really remember what it all was. And then also in here was, well, what do you know? Another Hernandez brothers one. Gilbert, Mario, and Jaime. They all three work on this issue. I never really got into the Mr. X comic. Mr. X, is that what it is, right? Yeah, Mr. X. I just didn't get a handle on what the character or get involved. But it's fun. I think all the Hernandez brothers issues, the ones they were involved with, were collected in a trade paperback. This is the Mario part. Bam! That's quite a headshot. So that's an interesting one. Just two more. There was an issue of American Flag. I remember at the time this came out, thinking it was pretty funny. The older, more sophisticated me thinks some of the humor is a little more ham-fisted than it needed to be. But, you know, he knew his audience. The age I was at that point, it was probably about right. So, so interesting stuff. That stipple effect he uses for some of these highlights is pretty interesting. So a fun, futuristic take. I'm not going to go into the whole... It's a pretty pretty involved backstory for this, but it is set in the near future. And it's kind of like Blazing Saddles, actually, where they bring a new sheriff to town that they bring in because they think he's not going to be a problem. And then instead he becomes a problem by trying to clean things up and do the right thing. So there you go. This is just American Flag. It's just a ripoff of Blazing Saddles. You heard it here first. And then Martial Law. You know, you cannot break superhero stuff down much more than this does. But I like all the gory goofiness of this stuff. At some point I felt it was getting repetitious, so I don't think I have every issue, but it's fun. It's this artwork isn't for everyone, but I think it's fun. It suits the themes. So anyway, that's just a little part of what's in that box, and I'm going to do a few more quick videos, and hopefully them being shorter and kind of more put together theme-wise, although this might not seem like a theme. It has one. And they'll be a little bit more enjoyable that way. All right, thanks for watching.